So the new Kicker key lock, what is it? It is awesome. Why do you need it? Well, you need it because you really like your car, but your audio system, not so much. You want it to sound better. But you've got to keep that factory radio for all the controls that it offers to the rest of the vehicle. That's where the Kicker key lock comes in. It's going to restore that audio signal back to the way the recording engineers recorded it. It's going to restore the bass response, the clarity, and the equalization so you can add any aftermarket equipment to make it sound better. You can add speakers, subwoofers, amplifiers, whatever your heart desires. That's why you need the new Kicker key lock. Go out, pick up one of the Kicker key locks, and watch the rest of this video on how to set it up and tune it. One of the cool things that you can use the key lock for is to evaluate the frequencies that are present on the input to the key lock. We call this auto frequency detect. It basically works like a 3-band RTA. The first LED will indicate low frequencies from 20 to 200 hertz. The middle LED, as you saw just come on, will detect frequencies from 200 to 2 kilohertz. And the third LED, or the high frequency indicator, will indicate frequencies from 2 kilohertz to 20 kilohertz. So what we'll want to do is we'll want to turn on our source unit with all the tone controls set flat and the listening position centered if you have those type of adjustments. Play pink noise at a moderate volume level, about mid-volume level. Then we'll begin to turn the input level of the key lock up until we see the LEDs begin to illuminate. So if you notice, the mid and high frequency LEDs illuminated, which is telling me that I have a mid and high frequency output. I've got less low frequencies in the signal. As I continue to turn the input level up, you notice I had to turn it quite a ways before the low LED showed frequency. That means I've got an unacceptable signal for using for a subwoofer. It only has a mid and high frequency output. Therefore, I would want to look for a different source of input if I was going to connect a subwoofer or if I was looking for a full range output. Now let's test another signal. Begin turning the input up. Now you notice the low and the mid LED illuminated. That means I have a low pass crossover on this output. Therefore, this signal is not going to be acceptable for a full range output, such as the output to a set of door speakers. It's only going to be acceptable for mid bass or for a subwoofer. I can continue to turn the input up even further. Eventually, that high frequency LED comes on, which means I do have some high frequencies, just not nearly as much as I do the low and the mid frequencies. Let's test a third signal input. Begin turning the level input up on the key lock. And if you notice, all 3 LEDs came on at approximately the same time. This means I have a full range signal and it is useful for any type of output I'm looking for. This is the signal I'm going to want to use for a full range output. So now we want to do gain match with the key lock. I'm going to download the gain match track from the support tab at kicker.com. I'm going to play it in the source unit at approximately 3/4 volume level. This is going to be the maximum unclipped output from our source unit, and this is where we're going to set the input gain on the key lock. This is the most important step. You must make sure you do not clip the input on the key lock or your results will not be satisfactory. To put the key lock into gain match mode, I'm going to push and hold the key button on the right side of the key lock and hold it until you see the LEDs scroll to the right, and then they'll scroll to the left. Let up on the key button and you'll see the first LED is illuminated. That means I'm now in gain match mode. With that source unit turned up to approximately 3/4 volume, I'm going to start turning up the level of the input until I see LEDs 3 and 4 illuminate. This means I have clipping on the left channel and the right channel, and I need to turn the input source down. Turning this slowly, you notice the LEDs will shut off. This means I'm no longer clipping the inputs to the left or right channels. We'll want to let this sit for about 10 seconds to make sure as that sweep goes higher and lower in frequency, it does not clip either the left or the right inputs. Now that we have the input level properly matched to the source unit, we're going to begin the setup process. Play the noise floor track on your source unit with the volume still remaining at 3/4 output. Make sure the noise floor track is playing before you begin the next process. You will simply press the key button one time and you'll notice the number 1 LED will begin to flash. That tells me it's detecting the noise floor in your system. Once the LED 2 begins to flash, now you're ready for the next step. Immediately press the next track, which is going to be full test. You'll see the LED 2 come on solid, and then you'll wait for anywhere from 3 to 8 minutes for it to do its evaluation. The LED 2, 3, and 4 will light up sequentially to tell you as it's finished each of the processes. Now it's calculating and correcting the frequency response. It's now done. By pressing the key button one more time, we exit the setup mode, and if you notice, all 4 LEDs are lit. The right LED, number 4, is telling me that the processing is turned on. The other 3 LEDs, the low, mid, and high frequency indicators, are telling me we have a complete usable full range signal. If we want to hear the difference between the corrected and uncorrected signal, we can simply press the key button on and off to hear the difference.
Set the dip switches with the amplifier out of the vehicle before it's mounted. The first switch is turn on mode. Select 12 volts if you're using an RCA level input from an aftermarket head unit and a separate 12 volt turn on lead. On this vehicle, we are using speaker level input, so we will select it to DC offset mode. The second switch is the fader switch. We want to set it off so it will send signal to all 4 channels with a 2-channel left and right input. The third switch is a compressor that will limit distortion. We will leave it off for now. If the compressor circuit is engaged, these indicators will illuminate when the key's output is being reduced. The fourth switch is biamp mode. We want to make sure we have it turned on because we are biamping the front speakers only in this vehicle. If we are running 4-channel mode with front and rear speakers, we would want to select it to off. Next, we have the kicker EQ switch. Leave it engaged if you want a subtle bass and treble boost. For now, we will leave it engaged. The next switch is the time delay mode built into the key. If the car has factory time delay, you may want to defeat the key's time delay for better center image. The last 2 switches control the high-pass crossover. They can be set to 60, 80, or 120 Hz at 24 dB per octave if you wish. Next up is the radio detect button. If you have a modern factory smart radio and you're using the speaker level outputs to send signal to the key, you may need to engage this switch to prevent your factory radio from shutting down or throwing a trouble code. After the setup is complete, the gains can be adjusted for both amp 1 and 2 independently.
As you can see, the power wires are all taped off to prevent moisture from getting into the connections should something spill under the seat. Now all we have to do is grab the key amplifier and mount the amplifier. We're going to mount this with Velcro since it's much easier to mount this way. Plug in the harnesses. There, all the power connections are made. Now all we need to do is plug in the microphone, put the seat back in place, and go through setup after we put the fuse back in the power harness under the hood. Now that all the connections have been made inside the vehicle to the key amplifier, the final thing to do before you run the setup process is insert the fuse and the fuse holder on the power wire by the battery. Before we start the pink noise track, it's very important to make sure the equalizer is set completely flat. And in this application, since we're only tuning the front speakers, we need to move the fader clear to the front to make sure the rear speakers are not playing. If the rear speakers are playing during setup, they're not running through the key amplifier. This will cause the amplifier to fail the setup process. The key is completely hooked up and we've turned it on to verify that all 4 speakers that are connected to the key are functioning properly. The plug to the rear speakers has been disconnected because we only want to play the speakers that are running through the key for the setup procedure. Now we'll take the microphone that's included with the key and the rubber strap. We're going to place it on top of the driver's headrest as facing vertical as possible to set up the tuning process. Everything's all set up. The radio is now powered up, paint noise is loaded. All we need to do next is make sure we're in a quiet environment, all the windows are shut in the vehicle, no air conditioning's running anywhere, no outside noises. We're gonna push the startup button once I turn on the paint noise to a moderate level, and when I start hear beeps, I'll have 10 seconds to shut the door and let it go through a setup process. So let's go. You've just heard the happy tones. That means everything worked great. Now all we need to do is push the setup button one more time. That takes it out of the setup mode. Paint noise begins to play once again, telling me everything is tuned. Now all we need to do is unplug the microphone, jump in and enjoy. See you on the road.